Welcome, everybody, to the Fantasy Formula, and we're live ahead of the sprint race for the Chinese Grand Prix. Terry, we have a lot of tough questions to answer over the next hour, but let me start with you. Is it too early to have a coffee in the UK?
It's never too early to have a coffee, but it is too early. I feel there's two different questions there.
It is definitely too early. We got really lucky in the US with some of the scheduling of these Asian races to start the season, but the UK definitely taking a beating to start the year.
Yeah, but we get it right for the rest of the year, so we can't complain. We'll be fine. We'll be fine. It'll come good, I'm sure.
It'll get tougher for me soon. Now, Terry, you dropped the first news of the hour just a few minutes ago. Alex Albon's going to be starting from the pit lane for the sprint race. I don't think that has any fantasy bearing, but something worth noting if you have still a Perez or a Bottas in your lineup, because he'll go from starting before them to after them.
Yeah, like I say, he was towards the back end of the grid, and I can't remember exactly where he was, but I don't think it's a surprise there. Williams are struggling all weekend. A setup change was kind of on the cards for them, wasn't it? So
it'll be interesting to see when Williams can start shedding that weight and get back to the upper midfield where we're used to seeing them. This is going to be a big hour to talk about chips. Terry and I are going to talk about all of the chips that are in play, including the ones that we're going to lock in for this week. There's a poll going on right now. I want to hear what you're looking at as the hour starts, because the early data shows 32% looking at the 3X boost, 29% looking at Limitless. And it could depend on how you entered the week coming out of the Australian season opener. All right, let's dive into the starting grid for the sprint that's going to kick off at the top of the hour. So Mercedes are back out in front once again. Another clear George and Kimi, P1 and P2. But Terry, where things started getting a little messy for us if you're trying to run the Limitless chip is how do these McLarens slide in? Because it's McLaren, Ferrari from P3 to P6. What's your instinct on whether or not this pace from McLaren is real versus something they can only do for a single lap that will fall off in a Grand Prix?
I think it's real, but I'm expecting more from Ferrari. I think we're quite disappointed with Ferrari this weekend so far. They obviously tried that upside down wing, ripped it off, talked about it being too early, and then went back to the more traditional one that we're used to. It doesn't strike me with confidence, and they know what their best setup is. You don't make those sort of changes very lightly and very easily. So I think, again, it puts them in that window of, have they got the right setup for this weekend? Did they try something and it didn't work and they've gone back to it? McLaren has surprised me with how much they've came back, actually, just after one weekend. We talked last week about, obviously, them struggling with the Mercedes power unit, how to get the best out of it. We've heard, obviously, the talk about Mercedes not giving them the blueprint for it. So, yeah, for them, it's one of those where, actually, can they sustain it? Or is it a case of they've managed to get one lap pace out of it and not race pace, like you say? The sprint will tell us a bit more over whether lap pace is real and they've actually got to grips with this car and this engine, or whether, like you say, it's just going to be one pace, disturb it, but those Ferrari with those starts are going to come back to him.
I was wondering the same thing about Ferrari running that Macarena wing in FP1. Did it not give them enough time to understand the right configuration of the car with the race spec wing that they ran in Australia? So I wonder if they're going to get it back. We're going to get into the betting lines a bit later on, but Vegas is starting to lean toward Ferrari and thinking that they will pick up some of that race pace as the weekend goes on. We've got a lot of friends in the chat. Hey, Mike, welcome aboard.
Mike.
I see Race Maven's in the chat. Hey, Race Maven. Dying to know what you guys are thinking about for chips this week. Mike, you usually run a very similar team to Terry and I. We're very like-minded, so I wonder what chip you're leaning toward. As we move down a little bit, Terry, you've been the Red Bull whisperer in the last 2 seasons, but Max and Isaac starting quite low for them, behind an Alpine, to be exact, P8 and P10. Is this just a bad weekend for Red Bull, or are they one post-sprint Parc Fermé away from being back in contention?
I'm not seeing anything that strikes me as they've got any grip on this track with this setup, to be honest. Nothing from the free practice or even the sprint qualifying lets you think that they've got an idea. And interesting, they've taken neither car out of Parc Fermé to make changes, which makes you think that they're not entirely convinced they know. I think they're just off the pace, to be honest, this weekend. Whether or not this is a track thing, we talked about this last week. The one thing we don't know is whether or not certain tracks will suit certain engine manufacturers, certain engine mapping, certain behaviours. That's one story that's still brewing in the background. We don't know actually if this is a case of once we get to certain tracks, we see that Red Bull powertrain forward engine come to the forefront, maybe even the Audi one to come a lot better, or whether or not this is a Mercedes have absolutely nailed it and they've got a rocket ship for the whole season. Because at the moment, it's starting to look like they have.
And it's a good segue into BN Corbett's point in the chat. So if Red Bull have fallen off a bit, looking at potential limitless teams, the drivers to me make sense. Russell, Antonelli, either Piastri or Norris. I think I'm leaning toward Norris,
Yeah,
Hamilton, and then I would probably go double Ferrari because I believe that Ferrari are gonna make up that pace. If you see the timings from FP1 and the sprint quali, you might be tempted to go double McLaren, but to the lineup that you put there, I probably wouldn't go triple McLaren. I think that's a little too much faith right away. I would either split it up and do Lewis, Leclerc, and the McLaren constructor, or probably Lando, the 2 Ferraris, and the Ferrari constructor? Yeah, I think
yeah.
split it up a little bit.
I'll go with that one.
Good, good. And Mike says he's running Limitless on team 1 and 3X on team 2. And I think that makes a lot of sense because Limitless is such a viable play this week if you're running 3 teams, because all 3 teams are eligible for prizes this year. Run Limitless on one of them and just take a shot at it because it is one of the top 3 combinations for the week.
Yeah, I think that's a big difference, isn't it, this year? You can kind of experiment a bit knowing that all 3 of them can win prizes and win in the league. So I think there's allow a bit more than that. That's a really interesting question, actually, before we go any further. Does the reduction in races from 24 to 22 change fantasy strategy at all? We're obviously expecting that announcement pretty imminently, and we're all pretty sure that's not going to happen now, Bahrain and Saudi Arabia. So I think we've got some ideas what we think the game's going to do. We're not entirely sure yet. It's definitely official, but it kind of feels like they're going to freeze it and just carry on as normal and just lose 2 races would be the most obvious outcome, I think.
And so I guess it's a good segue into the McLaren mini league that kicks off
Yeah.
this week. It is supposed to go for 3 races. That will probably end after Japan. But in terms of strategy, I think it does, particularly for Limitless. And I think why so many teams are flocking to Limitless now. We want to have that chip played early in the season when the difference between Limitless teams and normal teams' budgets are the biggest. So we have this race, Japan, which I think would be a perfectly good example. But Jeddah was the second best circuit for the Limitless chip last season, and the circuit, Terry, that you played Limitless at, and it worked out brilliantly. That's off the calendar now. So then we're going to go straight from Japan into Miami. And then we only have a few races until June 1st, which is when that hot engine testing is going to begin. And then all of a sudden, does that threaten Mercedes' lead at the top? So heading into Monaco the following weekend, historically the best circuit for Limitless, now there's a bit of uncertainty heading into that race weekend. So, yes, losing these races means more urgency on cost cap building and more urgency on using Limitless.
Do
Great
we
question.
think that Mercedes is going to get pegged back in June?
I don't think ultimately they'll be pegged too far back, but with only a few free practice sessions to throw Limitless on there, man, if Charles Leclerc has another home pole or something like that, that would really throw
Yeah.
you off. Good question by CC Riders for sure. All right, I want to jump over into some of the betting lines because this also impacts how we'd pick some of our limitless teams. You can see Russell and Antonelli are so far ahead of everyone else. Russell at minus 250 is so above and beyond anything I've seen for a P1 driver in recent years. But you can see both Ferraris ahead of, well, I mean, Lewis is tied with Lando here, but Leclerc much higher than his classification in sprint qualifying would lead you to believe. And also, Red Bull are well and truly behind all 3 of these constructors. So gives us a little shape into what the top limitless teams are. Both Mercedes, probably both Ferraris, and then pick your favorite McLaren driver. And then just a big mess at the bottom with Williams, Aston Martin, and Cadillac, all disappointing for various reliability reasons.
Who's better than those?
Well, there are some teams that are stuck from a money perspective, and they have to flip a coin on their favorite Cadillac driver, but that's a tough spot to be in.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've made it a whole 10 minutes without calling for likes and subscribes. Make sure if you haven't subscribed to the channel that you do, and make sure you hit that like button because if I see a lot of likes coming soon, I'll show you which chip I'm using even earlier than I usually do. So make sure you hit that like button. All right. Alexandra says, I'm going to save my 3X for another race mainly because of reliability. I think it depends a little bit too on who you have on your team. I think a lot of those Russell, Leclerc, Leclerc, Piastri builds from last week that were very popular might shy away from the 3X. For teams like mine that have the two Mercedes drivers at the top, I'm really looking strongly at it. Even though we had a new sim come out not 5 minutes before we kicked off this live stream, I'm not turned off by it right now. The 3X boost is looking really strong.
Would you pick Hulkenberg over Lawson? I just saw that one in the comments somewhere.
Let me come over to the team calculator because for any of you that haven't seen this sim, he just posted a V2 sim a few minutes ago. Lawson versus Hulkenberg. So from a points perspective, looks like a wash. But Hulkenberg's sitting on that DNF from Australia last week. So if we go over to the budget builder, I haven't refreshed this with the new sim. Not looking good for Hulkenberg. 97% chance of losing 0.6 million. So this early in the season, I need drivers that aren't a sure thing to lose a max tier B price.
So you're sticking with Lawson?
Sticking with Lawson. I get that Hulkenberg should be fast and should be on the ascent soon, but I need him to kick that DNF from his 3-race average before I can trust him. Black Kitten, hopefully I've answered your doubts. Let me know what you're thinking about if you still have any left. I know social media has been very anxious the last 2 hours on what to play for a chip.
What's that question there? For Limitless, what's more important to rank? Using early for Delta, using for a sprint, using on a circuit that's predictable like Monaco, or using when most of my drivers set to likely have a price rise? Blimey, there's a lot to unpack in that one.
Terry, you didn't unpack the best part. You didn't say their name.
Absolutely not. I'm not trying that this early in the morning.
It's Cuckoo Cuckoo. I'll tell you what it is. And I'll tell you what's most important to me. So when picking a Limitless race, number 3 is most important for me. Predicting the top 5 drivers and top 2 constructors means you're going to get the most points out of Limitless. So that's number 1. That's point number 3 and my number 1 ranked thing when considering Limitless. Point number 4, when using most of my drivers to likely have a price rise, that's the second best thing. That's a fringe benefit of Limitless. Part of the reason why so many teams are looking at it now, because teams like mine gained 2.9 million, others gained as much as 3.3 million in Australia, and you're trying to capture those cost cap gains again. So those 2 things are really important for me. I don't think it's necessary at all to use for a sprint race. It just happens to be convenient for this sprint race. Last year, it was Monaco, Jeddah, Suzuka that were very, very good for Limitless, and they were non-sprint weekends. Using early for the Delta is probably in the middle. The difference between Limitless budgets and my budget right now is much bigger than what it would be at the end of the season when I'm up at 130, 140 million. Looking at the poll results for who we currently have as our 2X driver, 72% of the community has George Russell. It's very interesting there. 12% have someone else. Who would that someone else be? Probably Antonelli. Or maybe the occasional Piastri if they were trying to capture it on his home race last weekend. Terry's one of the 7% that had Lewis on one of his teams.
I did.
All right, I want to dive into our first member lineup, and this is one of our newest members, Tactical Whiffs. So they have 3 teams here, removing Hulkenberg for Lawson on team 1, team 2 rolling with a Terry special with Lewis as the 2X driver here, and then the exact lineup I have with the exact decision, 3X boost or Limitless. For me on team 1, I wouldn't use no negative until we get onto a wet weekend, particularly a wet sprint weekend. I know you're worried about the coverage of VCarb here. If it freaks you out too much, feel free to put Colapinto in over Lawson because that money should be neutral when you're pulling out Hulkenberg. When you look at the team calculator, you can scroll over here and sort by DNF rate. And you got to scroll down a fair bit before you get to the likes of Lindblad and Lawson at 13 and 14%. Those aren't bad odds at all. So I wouldn't mind triple racing bulls, but you will have to hold your breath a little bit over the next 24 hours. As for this chip, I think if you have Russell and Antonelli, the default move is the 3X boost. If this is how you started the week, you can carry a free transfer to Suzuka. That's a benefit. Good chance of cost cap gains. You're tripling probably the 2 best drivers that stand out in a way that I don't know if we'll ever see for the next month or 2. So, for me, I'm aiming toward 3x boost over Limitless, especially if you're starting like this. And remember, if you're not already a member, you could get your lineup on a slide like this and early access to our videos and be in a league with Terry and I. Although when we checked our members league on who was winning this week, it was me. I had such a good week in Australia. I'm winning
Oh,
early.
wow.
No fun. They'll catch me. They'll all catch me soon. I'm not.
Couple of quick questions there. Should I be removing Piastri?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So Piastri on his DNF, I think that's going to be a cost cap loss for him. And in that same price range, 25.2 million, I would definitely take either of the Ferrari drivers. Kimi Antonelli for sure. So I'd definitely get Piastri out for those reasons.
And Daniel's asked, have we got a team for a 100 million budget?
Let's whip one up right here on the F1 Fantasy Tools Team Builder, just so we can get you going right away. This team, I like team 2 on this list: Ferrari, V-Carb, Russell Antonelli, Colapinto, Lawson. You'll have to bite the bullet somewhere with Bottas. The
Yeah.
alternative would be Antonelli Hamilton instead of Russell Antonelli, and then you could get some Haas boys in there and no coverage of Cadillac. These are probably the 2 teams I'd recommend the most. A little bit of Antonelli Hamilton with Lindblad. I probably trust that a bit more too. Always happy to show some love to the $100 million club. Is 3x on Antonelli Leclerc a good play for this weekend? It's not as obvious to me that they're the top 2, that they could be the top 2 drivers. Like, I don't see a path to Leclerc. Let's see, where he's starting down in P6 in this sprint. I don't see a path to him clearing his teammate and getting up toward where the likes of George and Kimi are. So I'd save 3x. If you have that combination now, you're closer to a Limitless team, and then just holding 3x for later in the year when you can afford a little bit more, like a Russell and a Kimi.
Ooh, would you choose Charles Leclerc or Lewis Hamilton? That's an interesting one. Lewis hasn't looked off the pace this weekend. He's looked quite comfortable, to be honest. We know obviously he had a really good sprint weekend here last year, so I think Lewis is enjoying driving the cars. I think it's a sign that he's not as short of confidence as what he was last year.
You know, after recording the Final Thoughts video this morning, I realized I haven't given enough respect to Lewis. He had the sprint race win here in China last season. He has looked the faster of the 2 Ferraris so far. And you can see here in the latest simulation, projected to do a little bit better than Charles. So
Yeah.
if you're a team like Terry's and you have Lewis in it already, I definitely wouldn't take him out for Leclerc. By the same token, I wouldn't quite use the 3x boost on a team that includes Hamilton yet either.
No, I think that's the thing, is that I think if you're using the 3x boost, you've got to have a Mercedes driver potentially, or both Mercedes drivers in there to maximize it.
Then Alexandra asks, would you switch Leclerc for Antonelli and Bortoletto for Colapinto? Ooh, I would. I think Mercedes could really run clear of this in a way that obviously Bortoletto should have more pace than Colapinto in this race, but I don't think that he's going to pull a gap so big to cover the difference between Leclerc and Antonelli at this point.
No, I think Gasly's shown that actually if Colapinto gets on it a bit, that actually that Alpine's not as bad as maybe what it's been in the hands of Colapinto. He's struggled a lot more, hasn't he, than what Pierre Gasly has. Pierre had a great performance yesterday in the sprint qualifying, which makes you think that the setup isn't too bad. It's obviously just around Franco, just get the grids fit and gap between Franco and Pierre now.
Stewart just woke up. Only last minute update is Alex Albon starting from the pit lane. So the only fantasy relevant assets would be if you have a Cadillac driver in because you can't afford much else, he's going to start after them instead of before them.
It's not as dramatic as last week trying to fix Kimi's car, is it?
No. Luckily, I had to make what felt like a very bold decision at the time. And then the Verstappen crash opened the door for Kimi to join the track. And then it was a lot less stressful after that. All right, DP513 run says Russell with the 3x, Antonelli with the 2x, Behrman, Lawson, Lindblad, Ferrari Racing Bulls.
Yeah,
Co-signed. Absolutely.
definitely.
Looks good to me. Let's pop over and cover over our next member lineup because I think a lot of our members have similar lineups to what a lot of our audience is going to have too. So let's see what we got. This is our friend Race Maven. I think these are 3 flavors of the same lineup. And so we got to pick one. So we've got Cadillac for Bottas and Team 1 and Team 2 options. Team 3 is Kimi Lewis, V-Carb instead of Haas. No George Russell in the middle there. I'm leaning more toward Team 3, but I got to convince you to move the 2X from Lewis to Kimi. I don't see a path to a Ferrari beating a Mercedes unless something crazy happens.
I would go Team 3.
Would you keep the 2X on Lewis? Do you believe in him that much?
Potentially over Kimi, but it's a tough one, isn't it?
I'm voting Kimi. I'm going with it. All right, here's Rick, who now goes by We Are No Longer Checking. Had to get rid of Hulkenberg, so he has to forego Haas for V-Carb in order to do that. Thinking about taking a -10, which is the middle team, and then not use a chip this early in the season. I took a look at this before we went on air, and I'm actually leaning more toward this last team. And this is partly me growing and developing a little bit more based on some of my failures last year. Because I found 3 or 4 times I took a -10 to chase a little cost cap gain, and every single time the guy I chased DNF'd. So now you're up -10 plus a -20 for the DNF plus a 0.6 million loss. It's a mess. And so, Rick, I recommend Team 3. If you're worried about the V-Carb overexposure, I like the bubble for Franco here. Same thing here. George Russell, gotta have the 2X boost over Lewis. Unless
Yeah.
something unspeakable happens to that Mercedes today or tomorrow, I think he's gonna score a lot more.
Yeah, no, if you've got George in now, I think he's a guaranteed shoot for the 2X, isn't he?
Good. And then Brian,
Hello, Brian.
switched from BZ to Brian, so it has me all messed up. And so
Brian, what are you doing? What are you doing to us this season?
Brian, this is a really creative lineup on the left here. Triple Ferrari, triple Haas, Bortoletto. Should be lots
Ooh.
of price gains on the left. Team on the right is just the tried and true Limitless team with Lando as the 5th driver over the likes of Piastri and Verstappen. I like it. Lots of faith in these Ferrari drivers as the 2X boosted driver on Limitless teams. I would go George here, but otherwise this lineup looks good. Team on the left, if you keep banking budget with this, it's going to be awesome in the second half mini leagues. You'll just have this huge fat budget the rest of us don't quite have. You'll be able to run some really good teams. All right, let's jump back into the team calculator in case we have to refer to it for some more questions.
Hassel V-Carb. That seems to be coming up quite a lot. I'm assuming there's a constructor link there with choosing one or the other.
I'd say it depends on a few things. One is if you have one or the other, I'd just stick with it. I don't think using a transfer to move out one for the other is necessarily better. If we look at the team calculator, they're right on top of each other at 17 expected points. The budget building scenario is almost identical for both of them. So it really comes down to this 1.1 million difference between their costs. If that gets you a better midfield driver, then V-Carb's fine. Otherwise, Haas is also a perfectly good look. I think slightly more reliable. We haven't seen a Ferrari or a Haas break down to the extent that we've seen, say, Arvid Lindblad parked on the side of the road. We had Hadjar DNF from the Grand Prix last week in that Red Bull Ford powered car. So a little bit more reliability in the way of Haas.
So Brian's question didn't come through.
Brian, let me know your question. I'll knock it out right here. And in the meantime, Geselig, when are we going to drop the lineups? Gotta get higher than 32 likes, and we'll drop.
Absolutely, come on.
It's coming soon, I promise.
At least 33.
Beast makes a good point. The best team for Limitless is possible, but rolling a transfer to Japan is pretty tempting too. If that's the first week you want to get into a 2-tier A constructor lineup, if you want to shift, if there's a bunch of DNFs and you need to shift for the sake of restoring cost cap growth, having that third transfer this early in the season could be very powerful.
Mex is 15 now. I think that's a good call. They're using wildcard because one of their teams had Piastri, Hulkenberg, and Hadger in it.
That's exactly why I'd
Yeah,
use
absolutely.
the wild card. Never too early to get right if you have that much bad juju on your team. Black Kitten, if the F1 app is having some gremlins, use the website fantasy.formula1.com. It's usually more reliable.
Yeah, the app has got better, I must say, this year, but there's still some issues with it, especially if you're using it on different devices, I found. Oh, Brian's drops us in. Brian's first slide was pre-limitless. The second slide was his proposal.
Let me come back to it. So this is pre-limitless, and this is
What he's
limitless.
proposing.
Well, that'd be pretty good then, because this is a team that doesn't have any Mercedes coverage, so scoring might be tough on it, but they could, all 7 assets go up in value, which
Yeah.
would then be happening in the background while your limitless team does the heavy lifting on the scoring.
I'll probably just move that 2x onto George rather than Charles.
Is that what you were asking for, Brian? I definitely agree with the lineup. Just like Terry said, moving the 2x to George, and then it'll be totally right.
Brendan's asking for help. Currently have Max, Leclerc, Bottas, Bortoletto, and Lindblad. Who should I switch, and should I use a chip to do so? Max should probably need to move out, to be fair.
Yeah, and I think it's an easy move because Max costs 0.3 million more than George Russell, who should far and away score much more points than Max this week.
Absolutely. So Max out and put George in as a straight swap straight away. That's one of your transfers gone.
Now, then the question is, how do you get Bottas and that probable 0.6 million drop out of your team? I don't know how much additional cost cap you have. If you come down to Valtteri here, you'd need at least $1 million to get up to Liam Lawson. So you could bring Max down to an Antonelli, frees you up 4.5 million. Then you can really start moving up Bottas into some better drivers. If you have it in hand, you can go from Verstappen to Russell and then move Bottas that way. But I try to get out of both of them. Valtteri is going to lose 0.6 million almost for sure. And then Max he seems pretty marooned at the bottom of the top 10 this week.
Yeah, like I said earlier, I don't see Max being able to have a car that's going to pick up the points or the pace to get back through. And I think a lot of teams are going to be using the sprinters much more of a free practice session, especially towards that bottom half of the grid.
Brian's got the 2 times on George. Good man.
Cool.
Black Kitten's already in bed because it's 3 a.m., so you must be somewhere in Europe, perhaps a bit east of Terry or west of Terry.
Yeah, it's going to be Europe. Yeah, well, 2:30 here. So yeah,
we had daylight savings time here in the U.S. last weekend, so my time zones are completely messed up, right?
I do like the fact we have our time zones because I have absolutely no clue what time zone Adam's in. Still, after how many years you're doing this now? And
EST.
It's quite amusing.
I'm in Boston, so I'm Eastern time. So Daniel says, on my team 1, using Limitless, thinking about Max instead of Norris, am I delusional? Not delusional. I think what you're hoping is that Red Bull are always so successful at making the adjustment they need to get back into the thick of things. There is the Parc Ferme after the sprint race where they can get right. This isn't like 3-4 seasons ago where if you're screwed in the sprint, you're screwed in the Grand Prix too. So there is a path to Max. He just seems really despondent even for Max, and we've had a competitive session, so it feels like it's very real.
Yeah, I just don't think they got the answers. I just don't think there's enough in the car and the gap. I mean, he was over a second, wasn't he, to George yesterday? So I don't think there's enough in there to kind of get them in the mix. I think the McLarens look a lot more comfortable. They've clearly unlocked something since last week. Probably found the Mercedes engine manual that they can use now. And for me, we saw Max come back, but he came back from way back into the sort of middle of the pack, didn't he, last weekend? And then kind of started getting held up once he come up against the Ferraris and that side of things. So I can't see a situation where Red Bull suddenly give him something that's going to rocket him towards the podium places, to be honest.
Pedro had a question about Hulkenberg and the points he needs to go up in value this week. I agree that the pace is there and that Hulkenberg should be trustworthy soon. But if you look down here, he needs 27 or more points to not lose zero point 0.6 million, which F1 Fantasy Tools predicts is a 97% chance. So that's why a lot of us are jumping off a Hulkenberg, even if it's a 1 or 2 week thing, just so we can get right. I would like pretty much any other driver in that price range, like Lawson up here at 6.3 million, a bit of a safer bet. Totally possible that he loses the value too, but there is a shot where a few overtakes gets into the bottom of the top 10 in the Grand Prix, and then all of a sudden he's cooking too.
Yeah, it's one of those, isn't it? Where actually the Audi powertrain in the Audi car doesn't look half bad. Actually, it looks like they've done a decent job, but that did not start last weekend has really killed him in terms of fancy points. And I think that's the key difference here with some of these. When you look at it on paper, you go, oh, Hulkenberg, reliable. Actually, yeah, the Audi engine not looking too bad, looking okay here. That mindset of having him in your team, absolutely, I'm with that. But when you look at what happened last week and what that's done to his budget, it makes him take him out for now, bring him back in. I would even be inclined to swap him with a Bourse letter if you've got that option. If you, hell bent on keeping that Audi powertrain in there, because it's not looking bad. Don't get me wrong. I think they've done a really good job of it, and it's looking quite solid in there.
Terry, we're at the bottom of the hour. We're up over 50 likes. I'm going to flash your team because I saw you had an early drop of your lineup. So I'm gonna
only because I don't schedule some of this stuff.
talk us through what we're looking at here.
So no chips actually, which is probably quite surprising in the chat. So I moved away from Mercedes to bring Racing Bulls in, and I wanted to cover off obviously having one of the Cadillac drivers at Bottas, so I wanted to get rid of Bottas as well. So it was a move down for this, but it's also allowed me to bring in George, as you can see, and then move the 2X onto George as well. So I'm kind of hoping George will bank the win and pick at the points. Ferrari will be solid enough with the two they've got. Obviously, Lewis is in the mix as well, just in case. But it also allows me to keep building budget and score some half decent points. Maybe not as much as something Limitless, but also means I can keep absolutely all of the chips ready for a later date. So it's quite an interesting one to kind of play about with, because my initial thought was straight away, let's go Limitless, let's play it like everybody else is doing. And then I thought, actually, that chip might come in handy later on, round a Miami time maybe, with what's going on. Because I'm not expecting a big difference in the teams catching up. I'm actually expecting the race cancellation could have a negative impact on the grid. And what I mean by that is that's 2 less races for the teams to understand the cars. So actually, this gap that we're seeing currently, where everybody's thinking it will close, and it will close eventually because it always does, we're about to take 2 Grand Prix away from the teams. So that's 2 less understanding. There's going to be no testing. There's going to be no additional stuff. Yes, they can run simulation runs, don't get me wrong, but nothing beats on-track data. And losing 2 Grand Prix worth of data makes you think that as we head towards Miami, we might still see that Mercedes dominance still playing a part on it, whilst everyone else struggles to catch up still.
It really warms my heart to see Lewis as a real F1 fantasy asset that people are aiming for. A lot of lineups, including yours, with him this week. For probably 2-3 years after his title run, he was really overpriced based on past performance, and he was unrunnable. And now he's finally at a spot and in a car where we can start him with some confidence. So it's really cool to see this. A couple relevant questions in the chat. Pedro wants to know about exposure to Racing Bulls and perhaps some of that reliability. I was nervous at first, but when you look at the sims for projected DNF rate, you got to come all the way down here to Lindblad at 14.1 and Lawson at 13.1. So what is that? 1 in 8 or so odds of them DNFing. It could happen, but if it does, do know that it was a pretty unlikely thing. So I don't feel too bad about it, even though that power unit has given us some pause. Hopefully they've worked out the kinks.
Yeah, it's one of those, isn't it? Well, I think there's a bit of a doubt over all the power units, isn't there? I mean, everyone's talking about Mercedes and how strong their power unit runs, but Mercedes aren't overly happy with the reliability of their car, in the sense of they know that by running it, how they run it, leaves question marks. And that makes me wonder about the customer teams, whether or not we're seeing a bit of that, whether or not they're being engine maxed because of reliability, and that Mercedes can extract the most out of it. I think this early in the season, we talked about last week, as soon as you turn these engines up, these gremlins are starting to creep in a bit more. So yes, during testing, they look reliable. Yes, we saw Ferrari do the whole of the testing with one engine until they got to the final preseason testing when they swapped it over. But it's a very different animal with these engines when you turn them into race spec and you start taking all that engine mapping off, you start taking those engine modes off, and you start racing them. All of these things creep in with a whole new set of regulations, a whole new set of engines, which you probably didn't even cater for. And I think everyone's got a slight question mark over them. It's just a case of which side you're going to fall on. I think we're going to see reliability problems. We're going to see engine problems. But I wouldn't want to sit here and say, yes, Mercedes have got a bulletproof engine, but actually the Ford Red Bull one doesn't look as good on that one.
Definitely going to be holding my breath for both of these races just to make sure whoever I do have in my lineup is safe from the DNF bug.
Big question, Adam. Are you staying up for the race?
Am I staying? I'm staying up for the sprint tonight for sure. This week has taken a piece of my soul since going back to Australia with some of the schedule of recording the show and the lives and stuff. So I might watch the Grand Prix on delay when I wake up Sunday morning, but I have to avoid the heck out of social media. Few people asking about my team. I want to see a few more likes in there before I share my team. I've just locked it in, but I haven't shared it anywhere yet, so you can't find it. But I will be showing it soon. Colapinto or Lawson? Iggy's asked this a couple times. This is interesting because, let's see, if we go back here and look at the points, Colapinto is projected for slightly more than Lawson.
Yep.
But boy, do I trust Racing Bulls a bit more than Colapinto at this point. They're starting the sprint in that meat grinder of cars that were knocked out in SQ2. I mean, a lot of people who aren't afraid to throw their elbows out, the likes of Ocon and both Racing Bulls and Gabby and Colapinto. That could be very hairy in the first sequence of turns. My gut says Lawson. But also, I currently have Colapinto on my team because that's what worked for my team last week. So please don't call me a hypocrite when you see Colapinto on my team later.
I think it depends if you're using the budget as well. I wouldn't swap one for the other, if I'm honest. I'm not sure if I'm looking at it, I don't think I'll make a move if it's a transfer involved from that point of view. If it's a choice between the two, I probably would go Lawson. He looks a bit more comfortable in what Franco does. But I think if it's a case of you've got either one in your team, I wouldn't use a transfer to move him. I think that's probably the fairest one.
Rick is celebrating my coming to the dark side on Franco Colapinto.
It's a budget thing, Rick.
I had to sit through a lot of crashes when he was with Williams because I thought this is the week he gets it right. So I deserve this moment. We've earned it.
Brendan, would you use a wild card or take the -10, -20? If it's -10, I'll probably say don't. If it's -20, then from that point of view, I think you're probably getting towards the road of is it better to take a wild card and go completely?
That's the line between -10 and -20. I call -10 the mild card. Anything more than that is a true wild card. I think you're only taking
that.
I know. We should trademark it.
Trademark it.
We've already got the FanAmp merch. We can make it a line of fantasy formula merch. It's because what are the odds that you're going to need more than 3 transfers to get right between now and the end of the year? Probably pretty good. What are the odds of you needing 4 or more transfers or 5 or more if you carry one over to get another -20? That's less likely. So -20 is the first point where I'd be okay using the wild card. -10, I just eat the penalty. All right. I think I have stalled on this long enough. Geslick's right. I am going to drop my team. And I haven't posted it on socials yet. So because you're here with us, you are going to be the first people to see it. It is 3x boost time. I had a team set up with both Mercedes drivers entering the week. This allows me to carry a free transfer into Japan. I have a team that could theoretically get 7 cost cap gains again after getting 2.7 million last week. With this lineup, I'm only really, in terms of the chip, worried about 2 drivers, whereas Limitless teams have to worry about their whole team from last week gaining value and their whole Limitless team staying out of trouble and getting the top 5 scores. So this feels like a good balance entering the week. So going with the big chip. I'll leave it here for a minute in case anybody wants to goof on me. Producer Greg's in the chat trying to get me to move the 3X to Colapinto. I'm one sneeze from ruining my whole sneezing, Greg. That's why I usually show it on social media instead of right here. But I'll tell you, if you have 3 teams, like I do, I have Limitless on
Yeah.
I think it's my team 3 because I had a mix and match of Mercedes and Ferrari, which
Yeah,
is a really good core for Limitless.
Had they gone for I can't afford to switch out Bottas and Hulkenberg without using a wildcard chip worth of this early. I would probably be inclined to with both Bottas and Hulkenberg in there. To be honest. Cadillac are not giving me a lot of confidence at the moment in terms of what they're going to do. And obviously, we said earlier about Hulkenberg dropping in price. So I think if you've got those two and you probably want to make some moves getting out of there, it's not a bad time to do it.
Yeah, Hadley, I have no problem using wildcard this early because you're going to get out of what would be a 1.2 million cost cap drop in the second race of the season. I'd get out of it.
I did same last season. Mine was early last season, my wildcard. I can't remember exactly when it was, but it was after probably about 3-4 races, if that. It was very early wildcard. I remember using it, so absolutely do it. What's the reason we're not using Limitless? On mine, I believe that I have used it on one of my team threes, like Adam alluded to with it, so I have used it somewhere else. But for the first team, I didn't see the point yet. I thought that actually bringing George in, dropping down the V car, pick up the points that way would be a better way of doing it, and keeping that chip for later on is the main reason, if I'm honest. So yeah, what about yours, Adam?
For me, it's a matter of starting the week with the clear 1 and 2 best drivers. If this was a Mercedes driver and a Ferrari driver, I would probably have used Limitless because then you'll have the benefit of a lot of these drivers from last week going up in value. You would have to probably move some transfers around to get to a 3X build like this. I probably wouldn't go through all the hassle of doing it. So then I would use Limitless earlier. And like with Terry, I have it on my team 3. So it's a good play. I just prefer if you have Russell and Antonelli already, go straight to the 3X boost.
There's also a question mark for me about the overtakes as well. Yeah, China has been quite high midfield overtakes in the past. We saw last week. If we go back to Helmut Marko, who didn't call them overtakes anyway. I can't remember what he called them exactly. Passing by was the phrase that he was using. But ultimately, they're classed as overtakes, even if it is a bit the old switcheroo going on. And I think that might play a part in China as well. I think we will see a lot of that, especially with that big 1.2 kilometer straight down the back. I think we're going to see the engine and the battery dying on that straight, if I'm honest, from what we've seen so far. And despite what the graphics may be showing us on the TV, what we're led to believe, I think the engines are definitely struggling down there. So, absolutely.
I get Rick's point. He wants to see some power unit consistency before using a big chip. I'm assuming that Mercedes is going to be in a good spot in this second race. A lot of reports that Mercedes aren't pushing that power unit, but still getting pretty massive speeds. So I'm hopeful that we won't find out the hard way. I think it also too, I guess that's the beauty of 3 teams being eligible for prizes. If I have a complete disaster with this team, at least we have some other teams to save the rest of the season, because it would be a long, whatever it is now, 8 months together if this team totally binned it.
Is F1 TV sandbagging battery and reliability? There seems to be a lot going on with graphics, isn't there? I mean, I'm not enjoying watching it. Going completely off fantasy topic at the moment. I want to see batteries. I want to see what they're doing. We're not seeing that at the moment. We can't really see what they're doing. You can hear it in some of the cars. You can hear the super clipping. So despite what the graphics is telling you, you can hear it down that straight. Yeah. And what you listen to as it goes down, you suddenly hear that whine sort of starting. You hear the revs going down at a point when they should be constant and saying that. And that's what's happening on that back straight. You can hear it on quite a few of the cars as they come towards that hairpin. Literally, it starts revving down. So even if the graphics not showing it, the telemetry and the RPM certainly do show it.
Yeah, I don't like the battery graphic. I know the role of the battery in the power unit, but then when you see it so often and so pronounced, it's starting to have that Formula E vibe that Verstappen
I
alluded to.
think they got a lot of work to do. I think it's like anything, is it, where it's all new regulations, it's all new stuff, but I think actually they're not making it very easy for the viewer to follow. I think that they need to hopefully they use a break to come up with some graphics and come up with some stuff, which they do. It is something that happens. So fingers crossed we get some better stuff. And maybe an extra decimal point back on the timing tower as well while we're at it.
Oh, I knew the 10th place would be killing you.
Absolutely.
You'll split the difference. You'll take
It's like going back to the 90s, seeing that.
That's awesome. All right, we've got 15 minutes left until lineups
wow.
lock. So make sure if you have any pending decisions, let us know what questions you have. We're happy to help.
Yeah, please drop them in. Still inside on Limitless because my team is the best for it, but I'm slightly worried that my luck means something will go wrong.
Yeah,
we can help with strategy. Luck, I'm afraid.
Well, let me tell you something, Beast. I think back to 2023. I used Limitless at Circuit of the Americas in Austin, and we had I think it was Leclerc and Hamilton both get disqualified from that race. I had them on my Limitless team, and then I had a piece of I think Leclerc with the Ferrari Constructor, so I had 3 disqualifications. It was a disaster for that team. I still finished in the top 2,500 in the world. It's a long season. You're going to have probably 4 or 5 very big disasters, but if you stay with it all season, you have a couple of good weeks, couple of lucky weeks, you're going to come out of it. So something bad could happen, but don't worry. It gets
3x or Limitless. Right now my team is Russell, Leclerc, Lindblad, Bortoleto, and the Ferrari Racing Bulls, and I didn't change anything yet. If I Limitless, who should I pick? I think if you're Limitless, I think the choice is pretty simple. I think you go for the 2 Mercedes drivers, 2 Ferrari drivers, and then Lando, and then you've got your Ferrari and your Mercedes as your constructors. I think that's probably the safest Limitless team I'll suggest at the moment. I'm not seeing anything else outside of that. If you wanted to, you could go Oscar over Lando, but to be honest, he's not shown me anything that makes me want to pick him over Lando. We know that those two are very similar in terms of times and how they drive, and actually they're probably 2 of the closest teammates, aren't they? So I think with that, that's the team I would go for if I was swapping to Limitless. I don't see a big difference in that one anywhere else up on the grid.
I totally agree with the team choice, and the team that Terry rattled off is P1 through P5 in the latest betting line, so Vegas agrees too. With that team setup of Russell Leclerc start, I would lean toward Limitless and hold 3x. If that was a Russell Antonelli team, you had that extra, 0.4 million, I would lean toward 3x. Just a matter of how your team starts the week.
I do see Red Bull changing Max's car, but what I don't see is I don't see a point where they can rocket it back to the front of the grid. So absolutely, I can see them changing the car. But normally, if we think back to last year with Yuki in the car, they would have experimented on one of the cars by now. And they haven't pulled any of the cars back into the pit lane for anything. So for me, it kind of feels like they haven't got the answers yet. They will get the answers. They will make the changes. Of course, they will. They might be better. But I don't see a world where we're suddenly going to see Max Verstappen on pole. As he sits here, says that's what happened now. But I don't really see, it's not really a Red Bull track where they've dominated in the past either, just in previous regulations. So it's not one where I think that they're showing me that they can make the changes, put Max towards the front end of the grid. I still think even with those changes, if anything, he's going to get in amongst the McLarens and maybe in amongst the Ferraris, but I don't think he's going to get in amongst the Mercedes at the top end of the grid still, even with changes. And what you've got to understand is that Mercedes can obviously do the same, so can everyone else. They have all that data to make changes as well, potentially. So yeah.
And most importantly, Max is the most expensive driver in the game.
Yeah.
So when you have an opportunity to move to George Russell, someone who is a half to 3/4 of a second clear of anything Red Bull could even hope for this weekend, I think the smart move would be to go from Verstappen to Russell and then just bank on those easy points. Verstappen is heading into Suzuka, which is a track that he absolutely owns. 4 in a row wins at Suzuka. So maybe we can pivot back to Max as early as 2 weeks from now. But for this week, I think it's Mercedes race to lose. Race Maven, thank you so much for the super chat.
Yeah.
Good luck to you as well.
Brian, we did put my line up, didn't we, Adam?
Yeah, let me come back over here.
I was just say, yeah, let's rattle it back off, Brian. Sorry, you missed it. We did have it up. There we go. So yeah, mine was Brian was very simple. Racing Bulls went in instead of Mercedes, and that allowed me to get rid of Bottas and bring in George Russell basically. So use my 2 free transfers, but not use a chip on it. Is the best way to describe it. And then it saves all the chips for later, and should still hopefully get some points to cost cap in there. Is the plan.
That's the plan. Let's hope it works.
That's the plan. That's the plan.
Let's see. Anonymous guy has Antonelli, Leclerc, Lindblad, Bortoletto, Behrman, Ferrari, V-Carb. So that is all assets going up in price. That's a perfect base for Limitless.
Yeah.
And then run a team that, like what Terry said earlier. I would say a team like this, we had some questions about Autopilot. I wouldn't use Autopilot if you're in between some of these Antonelli, Leclerc, Hamilton, Norris sort of flavors. I would wait until you have the far and away 1 and 2 drivers, and you really don't know who's going to be the best on the grid.
Would you run Limitless if my team gained 2.9 million last week and is set up well for this week too? Colapinto is least likely for a price rise, and he still looks pretty good. I'll probably be inclined to try it.
Scott, I would say, because I got 2.9 million too, I would say if you have Russell Antonelli, 3x boost. If you have any other mix and match, like a Leclerc and Antonelli, something like that, I would use Limitless.
Use 2 transfers to switch Leclerc Bortoletto for Antonelli, Colapinto, or Lawson, and use 3x.
Ooh. I would do it. I think Antonelli could be that much better than Leclerc this week. Leclerc doesn't have a path to a podium because of where he's starting in the sprint. Antonelli could easily get fastest lap in one of these races, snipe a few more points. I don't think Bortoletto and Colapinto are that far off from each other. Lawson is fine, but if you're running, say, triple V carb with the rest of your team, I'd probably divide up some of that risk and take the likes of a Colapinto.
Scott's got Russell to pair, so yes, I will go Limitless then, based on that one.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah, and then hopefully bank the price points well. A Lindblad, Bortoletto, and Behrman guarantee for a price rise.
They are currently all looking quite good. So what I like to do is I add the 0.2 million and 0.6 million columns, and that's the odds of them going up something. Behrman at 80%, Lindblad up 78%, Bortoletto at 72%. Even Colapinto's more than 50-50. So I'd say these top 3 drivers are likely to go up. There's a group in the middle that could go up, but things could also go south. And then once you get to Perez or so, it starts getting pretty bleak. These are the drivers I get out of.
2 times Leclerc Antonelli. I would be inclined to go Antonelli.
Yeah, I'm full send on Antonelli at this point. And when you look at the expected points in the latest sim, 40 versus 27.
Yeah. I mean, I think George has looked to cut above Antonelli, don't get me wrong. There's something in the third sector that George has clearly found. It seems to all be in the third sector between the 2 Mercedes drivers, but then Kimi's looks strong as well. So I think that actually, with the 2, I would definitely switch over. Best story of the weekend, a Lewis podium finally.
I'm with you, Trevor. That'd be awesome. Back-to-back podiums in the Chinese sprints.
That'd be good.
Norris
for Verstappen or Piastri for Limitless. I would go Norris.
Yeah, Norris.
Yeah.
Verstappen, I don't think Red Bull are going to revive that car to a point that he's going to store him through the grid like he did last time. And this is, like Terry mentioned earlier in the show, even when he was flying all the way up through the grid in Australia, this is where he's starting this sprint race, is about where he started getting stuck in traffic and he couldn't fly past people. It was a real challenge.
I just look at the teams above and think that there's nothing from the Red Bull this week that's going to take him past them in the sense so far. How about a team currently with Leclerc, Hulkenberg, Lawson, Lindblad, Colapinto, Red Bull, Ferrari? I'd probably try and get out of the Red Bull one.
You betcha.
And then that might potentially give you some better assets as well.
Let's see if we can do the speed math on this. Red Bull to V-Carb would get you 21.6 million. And then you can start spreading that out into either better midfield drivers or, oh boy, then you still have Hulkenberg to deal with too. Yeah, I think that would work. 22 million on top of Hulkenberg's 6.2, then all of a sudden you're into an Antonelli. You'd have Leclerc, Antonelli, Lawson, Lindblad, Colapinto, V-Carb, Ferrari.
Yeah,
I could live with that.
I think that'd be better.
With 5 minutes left before the deadline and my bedtime, I would check my speed math. But it made sense at the time.
I'll try and keep Leclerc though. They've said, should I remove Red Bull and Leclerc? I would try and remove Red Bull and Hulkenberg would be the two.
Yeah. Red
Is
Bull
what I'd try and remove. Might be worth doing a bit of maths on it, but I would take those two out and then see where you can get to. Probably, like I just said, a V-carb, and then hopefully there's enough left then to bring an Antonelli in. And then you shouldn't have used any extra penalties or anything transfer-wise. Should be a straight swap.
Seb C, give me Antonelli for the 2x boost over Leclerc.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, if that math works, where you can go from Hulk to Russell and Red Bull to Racing Bulls all day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rick, good luck to you too. I hope Colapinto does us all well.
Does us all proud.
4 minutes left. If you have any other questions or if you just want to have some chat with us, we'll be here for you. So let us know. Let us know what you need. As always, thank you so much for watching. We'll be back for the Japan preview, which is in 2 weeks. We get to enjoy a week off after 2 very tough wake-ups for Terry and I.
Oh, it's been brutal start.
Brian, good luck to you as well. GB Gamer, should you Limitless? Depends. If you had multiple drivers DNF last week, no. If you have Russell and Antonelli, I would 3x boost instead of Limitless. If your whole team went up in value and you have a mix and match of Mercedes, Ferrari, and Verstappen and McLaren from last week, like 2 top drivers mixed between those teams, I would Limitless. Juice box.
Interesting from Race Maven as well. Look, would you 3x Russell with Hamilton? I would probably save it still.
Save it at that point. Yep.
Save it so. Juice box. Russell. Would you pick Russell, Hamilton, Bottas, Behrman, Lindblad, Ferrari, V-carb, or Russell?
Oh, that's interesting. How bad do you want Antonelli? Is it enough to take on Sergio Perez, who didn't even take part in sprint qualifying?
Yeah, I would try and keep away from the Cadillacs and assets at the moment.
It's tricky because you're probably that gap between Antonelli and Hamilton's projected to be 10 points, but Perez seems almost certain to DNF at some point this weekend. So I think that would more than make up for it. And then you have the price drop. So I'd stick with Russell Hamilton.
Yeah.
Good questions tonight.
There is. And I think sprint weekend is early in the season. Absolutely. Limitless, Russell, Antonelli, Leclerc, Hamilton, Norris, Ferrari. Yeah, that's what I would go with. Limitless. Absolutely. That would be mine. Starting with Ferrari, V-carb, Russell, Hamilton, Hulkenberg, Behrman, Lindblad. Would you go Limitless or would you remove Hulk?
For that, I would
remove Hulk
and not play a chip.
Yeah, I would.
And see if your Hulk replacement, which probably like a Colapinto for that price or a Lawson, see if that team goes up in value this week, then you use Limitless in Japan, and then you're rolling.
Yeah, or even in Miami now, can't you? You can use there as well. So there's a couple of options.
Yes. But don't do what I did. Look at the forecast before you go on a live stream and lock in your Limitless team for Miami. Good luck to you too, Juicebox.
Blimey.
We have a lot of Limitless teams. I can't wait to see what happens this week.
I think it's going to shake it up. I think there's a lot of people playing different strategies, different teams as well. I mean, I know I have. One's got a 3x chip on, one's got Limitless chip on, one's got absolutely 0 on there. So it's going to be interesting to see how the end of the week, where they all end up, isn't it?
Everybody wants that tour of the McLaren MTC.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've never been there. It's one place I haven't been to. I would like that tour.
Win this league, Terry. I'll be your +1.
Absolutely, yeah. You know, done a few now, but not managed to get in there. Closest I've seen is in Star Wars films.
It's true.
It's true.
Looks like everybody's getting seated for the sprint race. So once again, thanks so much for watching. Terry and I will see you in 2 weeks. And until then, good luck this weekend.
Good luck, everyone.